guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to video 3 in my series of Want to Learn to Sew, things that you should know before you get started. So this video is about sewing machines. It's probably the one question I get asked about the most. And over the years, it has changed somewhat. As a new machine comes out or as I work with a different machine, I will start to suggest other machines. So this video I wanted to do because I have picked the top 6 sewing machines that I think are great for beginners. Some start as low as, $150, $175 up to like $350, $400. And it really just depends on what your budget is. But all of these 6 machines are great starter machines, and some you will grow into very nicely, especially the ones that are on the higher end. So I also wanted to say that in Sew It Academy, the very first course is about sewing machines. I literally take a sewing machine out of the box and I'm like, this is a sewing machine. I walk through all the parts of the sewing machine, all of their functions, how to thread it. We talk about everything that has to do with a sewing machine. So if you've never sewn before, if you've never even sat at a sewing machine before, don't worry, I walk you through all of that. And then we also have a resource list in Sew It Academy once you join that gives you a list of suggested sewing machines that I recommend. So I often get asked before people sign up, like, oh, what machine should I buy before I sign up? And I'm like, no, sign up. Watch that first course first so I can go through everything with you and then make the purchase. But I wanted to share the top 6 machines that you can currently find online because I know that because of the pandemic, it was a little hard to find sewing machines, but most of these are back. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And like I said, these are machines that I have either sewn on personally, or I know someone who currently sews on it, but I think 5 out of the 6 I have actually sewn and tested myself. And so that's why I am recommending them. So let's get started. So, when you're looking for a sewing machine, I know that sometimes some of the selling points are like, 300 stitches or whatever, and that's cool. It's cool, especially if you want to do like designs or you want to be super creative. But for the most part, I use like 3 stitches. I use the straight stitch, I use my zigzag stitch, and I use a stretch stitch that my machine has. Not all machines have it, but if yours does, that's fantastic. It's a really great stitch for when you're working with knits. And then the buttonhole. That's really it. I mean, outside of that, I don't use a whole lot of the stitches. Most of them are decorative, and I just honestly, I don't think I've ever used more than 4 or 5 stitches on my sewing machine. The other thing I wanted to say is the most important thing for me on a sewing machine, outside of the bells and whistles that my specific machine has, is a machine that can make good buttonholes. Good buttonholes, because buttonholes are key to your garment. So I always look for a machine that has and makes a good buttonhole. Let's see what else. Speed control. I always recommend this, especially if you're a newbie. It literally has a speed control so that you can decide how fast you want to go, right? Once you start sewing in the beginning, it's like driving. You get in your car, and if you've never been in one, you press the gas and the car goes, right? Because you have to sort of learn that sort of, same sort of thing with a sewing machine. But also sometimes beginners tend to start to sew, and then it's like they forget that they can just take their foot off the pedal, and so they start going out of control, and they're like, oh my God, and it would just take your foot off the pedal. But the speed control really helps with that, right? Because you could set it to go really, really slow. So no matter how hard you press on your foot pedal, it's not gonna go any faster than that. And I find that to be super helpful, especially for beginners. The other thing is I prefer a drop-in bobbin versus a front-loading bobbin, and that could be a whole video. And if you are a front-loading bobbin lover, don't come for me. I'm just saying my personal preference is a drop-in bobbin. I think it's easier. And I have found over the years, and trust me, I have been on a whole lot of machines, that I have less issues with drop-in bobbins. And if you're new to sewing, you don't know what the hell a drop-in bobbin is, but just look for it. Let's see what else. Oh, a free arm. A free arm is great to have because when you're sewing, let's say like a cuff on pants or a cuff on your shirt or something, you're trying to get into sort of a tight little area when you're sewing, being able to take part of that sewing machine off to have a free arm to be able to sew makes it so much easier. So make sure that that machine has a free arm. And then, you know, there are a lot of sort of bells and whistles that you might want. Some of these machines have them, some of them don't, especially the ones on the lower end. But to get started, the very basics, like I said, is speed control would be great. Make sure it has a free arm. Make sure it has good buttonholes, and that it's a drop-in bobbin. Okay, so the number 6, I'll go from 6 to 1. So the number 6 machine is the Janome 2212. This retails at about $189, and this is a really great like beginner machine. When I tell you it's not fancy, it's not fancy, okay? It's not fancy, ain't gonna have no bells and whistles, but it works. It stitches really great. It has a free arm. It has 12 stitches, but like I said, you really only need those basic 4, especially if you're doing garment sewing. If you're not so like super worried about decorative stitches, this is perfectly sufficient. And it does a 4-step buttonhole. Okay, now that might not be appealing for like a more seasoned seamstress. When you say 4-step buttonhole, you're like, oh, Lord Jesus. But if it does a 4-step buttonhole and the buttonhole is good, then it's okay, right? It just means that you're gonna do 1 step, turn the knob, do step 2, turn the knob, do step 3, turn the knob, do step 4. I had a 4-step buttonhole machine for many years when I first started sewing. And honestly, once you make a couple of buttons, it's not that big a deal. It's fine. Especially if you're on a budget and you need a good machine. The number 5 machine is the Brother SC6000i, which I have recommended this machine for many years. We recommended it on Sew It Academy. It's still a great machine. It retails anywhere between $150 and $179. It has 60 stitches. It has a needle threader, which is helpful, especially because your girl's in her 40s and I'll be like, where that needle? Okay. Speed control. It does have speed control, which is one of the reasons why we recommended it for so many years. It also is a great machine. I mean, it stitches really well. I sewed on this specific Brother for like 6 years when I first started sewing again. And I made all sorts of things. If you're on a budget and you need something that's gonna work well and has sufficient features, like I said, with the speed control and the needle threader, this is a good machine. It also has a free arm, and it's easy to select the stitches, which is always nice because you don't want something that you can't really, figure out too much. The number 4 is the Janome Mod 50, and this retails for about $300, but it's a computerized machine with 3 different buttonholes that are all 1 step. So that means you just push 1 button and it makes the buttonhole start to finish, right? Versus the 4-step buttonhole. It also has speed control, which is fantastic. Again, it had a locking stitch. Okay, so a locking stitch is on some sewing machines. You're gonna see, like, you guys know you back stitch, right? If you don't know what you back stitching is, you reverse to go back, it locks your stitches. But a locking stitch is actually a little button. Mine has a little 0, a little circle on it. And I just push that, and what it does is it goes up and down 3 times and it locks the stitch. So sometimes if you want to stop at a very specific point and you don't want to back stitch, go reverse, and then try and go forward again, you can do a locking stitch. So this Janome Mod 50 does have a locking stitch, which is really cool. It has a free arm. It has 50 stitches. One of the really great things also is that it has a metal frame. Super important because it means it has a great weight. So if you're using a coat or you're sewing a coat or something heavy, it has a good amount of weight, so it's not going to be moving on you. And it has easy threading, which is always a benefit, although we teach you how to thread your machine. And for the most part, all machines basically thread the same, minus a little thing here or there. And they all have, for the most part, graphics and diagrams to help you. Let's see, number 3 for me is the Singer Heavy Duty, the 4432 or the 4411. Honestly, most of the Singer Heavy Duty machines are really good machines. They're heavy duty, meaning they have really great weight. They have metal frames. It has good buttonholes, 1 step, which, is nice. It has a needle threader. It does not have speed control. Okay, so if you want speed control, this one does not have that. It does have a Singer Sewing Assistant app, which I thought was really handy. You can download it on your phone, and it basically helps you through different, sewing videos. If you need help, you sort of can go on the app, look it up. Cool. Nice to have. And it's good for really thick fabrics, right? So you can sew denims or wools. That's really helpful. And it also has easy threading. Now, I know a lot, and when I say a lot, I will say hundreds and hundreds of students in Sew It Academy who sew on the Singer Heavy Duty, and they love this machine. So partly recommended by the students in Sew It. The other one is the Brother SE600. So this is number 2 on my list. Now the Brother SE600, you guys saw me talk about it. I collaborated with them, oh gosh, over a year ago. And we did a couple of projects. The reason that I love this, and this one retails for, the Heavy Duty retails for about $200. Now the Brother SE600 retails for about $350 up to $380. I've seen it, but it's also an embroidery machine. So if you guys didn't see that, and you can search it probably on my timeline somewhere, I did also some embroidery on it, and we did a project on it, and I really enjoyed it. So it was a really good machine. And if you have a little bit more to spend on the machine, something that's going to grow with you, this was a good option for sure. Because like I said, it has embroidery, and if you plan to do embroidery or patches or something like that, it has a 4x4 embroidery area. It's computerized. It has 80 built-in embroidery stitches, right? So they're already built in, designs, lettering, things like that. It has 103 sewing stitches. Like I said, for someone like me, I really just need straight stitch, zigzag sometimes, and that's about it. Honestly, I rarely ever use my zigzag stitch unless I'm attaching elastic or something like that. Let's see, it has a touch screen, so that's cool. It has a nice little touch screen, one-step buttonholes, which is really nice. And then it also has a thread cutter, and it has speed control. So as you can see, all of those sort of features together, plus the embroidery for about $380 is a really good buy. And then my number 1 choice is the Singer Quantum Stylus, the 9960. This retails between $350 and $399. I've seen it online. This is a great machine. It has great weight. It's a digital machine, right? It's computerized. It has 600 plus stitches and lettering. So lettering is cool because if you went to do lettering, let's say on like the cuff of your husband's shirt or your shirt. I have a white button-up shirt and I monogrammed my initials on it. So things like that is very cool. It has a needle threader. It has speed control. It has a thread cutter. It has self-adjusting tension. Say what? Self-adjusting tension. That's really great, especially for beginners to have. Now, for the most part, once your machine is set, it's very rare that I have to ever change. Well, now I don't have to because mine is self-adjusting, but when I didn't have that, it was rare that I would have to adjust my tension much as I was sewing, to be quite honest. But on my sewing machine, it is self-adjusting. So whenever I choose the stitch that I'm going to sew, the machine will automatically adjust the tension for that stitch. That is very handy to have. And then it has a very heavy metal frame, which, like I said, you want something that's going to grow with you. And if you have the money to spend a little more than the $150, $200 range, up to maybe the $300, $400 range, this is my number 1 pick for that because, like I said, it has all the bells and whistles that I think are great for a beginner and also for you to grow into this machine for many years as you're sewing. And it has some of my favorite things, like I said, the thread cutter, which sounds silly, but is so very helpful to me. Anyway, guys, I hope that you found this video helpful and that it answered some of your questions. And I'm sure that there are so many other sewing machines. There are so many other sewing machines that I'm sure other people would recommend. But I only recommend things that I have sewn with or worked on personally so that I can give actual reviews on them. And so that is why I have specifically picked these 6 sewing machines as my top sewing machines for beginner sewers and intermediate sewers, or a beginner sewer wanting to not have to upgrade 6 months into sewing. Okay, guys, until next time, peace.